for joining the You Already Own It special edition SharePoint Hidden Gems call. We have a very exciting presentation. It was very well received, although when we did this originally in December, there was a lot of people who said they couldn't attend because of the holidays and whatnot. So we are replaying this session once again. So thanks everybody for joining. We have Mark Quickle and Jen Mason, who I'll introduce a little more in more detail coming up here in a minute. Jen, if you could move to the next slide. So again, welcome everyone. Just remember You Already Own It team is myself, Bob Ballard, along with Aaron Ward, George Scott, Scott Dowling, and of course Mary Tucker, who keeps us all in line, as well as all under the guidance of Steve Winter, our vice president. Next slide, please. So please don't forget that if there are any questions about this presentation or anything in general, that you said that you have questions, concerns about, please reach out to your You Already Own It team here at Planet at youalreadyownit@go-planet.com. Feel free to reach out and ask about those nagging questions, concerns, issues, strategic decisions, whatever they might be. We're here to help you. And as a You Already Own It customer, you're welcome to leverage that benefit at any time at no cost. Go ahead.
Joel Jensen just joined.
Hi, Joel. Thanks for joining. So if you could move to the next slide, Jen, please. So with that, we're going to get to the heart of what we're all here to see today, the SharePoint Hidden Gems. We have Jen Mason, who is a vice president here at Planet, as well as a SharePoint MVP and super smart SharePoint person, as well as Mark Quickle, who is our director of the SharePoint practice here at Planet, along with development as well. We're going to talk you through some hidden gems in SharePoint, or things that maybe you should be leveraging that you're not. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jen. I think Jen's ready to get things kicked off. Welcome and thanks for joining us, Jen and Mark.
All right. Hey, everybody. It's great to be with you here today. As we're going through the presentation, we'll have some slides and we'll have some demos. So please feel free to ask any questions that you have in the meeting chat, and I'll try to get them answered just as quickly as I can, as well others that are on the line. And so Mark and I are going to kind of go back and forth. So Mark, feel free to jump in, and then I'll pass some of the development pieces over to you as well. All right, so we wanted to talk about some of these hidden gems that are inside of SharePoint. So we really wanted to talk about some things around modern intranets, modern search, Project Cortex, Power Platform, and the SharePoint framework. So modern intranets is going to be one of those great things that has come such a long way. It used to be that we could do so much inside of SharePoint. We used to be able to build these great pages, but it still took a lot of effort. You used to have to sit down, you'd spend months and months planning, and then it would be teaching everyone how to build out these pages, and just it took a long time to do it and still cost a lot of money. When they modernized the SharePoint intranets, though, I'm happy to say that it's really a much better experience. With low cost and pretty low effort, you're able to go in, build a completely customized to you and your organization an intranet that is just full of information. It has a modern look and feel. It's completely responsive. People are able to access it on any mobile device, anywhere they're at. And I'm happy to say, as of today, we just did our latest roadmap update show right before this one, and all of the new features have been completely launched. So there's a lot of really great things that have come out in all of the GCC and GCC high environments. We also have modern search, such a big thing that's going to be coming out. You'll hear it often referred to as Microsoft Search, which is also going to power a lot of what's coming with Project Cortex. Then we have our Power Platform. That's going to be our big players. You're going to get Power Automate, Power Apps, and then you're also going to get Microsoft Dynamics there. And then following up with the SharePoint framework, which of course is what you're going to use to customize anything that you can't do out of the box. And so we're going to do some quick highlights, talk about some of our favorite features, and show off some of the great tools that you can use there. So first off, going into modern SharePoint intranets, the major highlight points: easy, quick, responsive. Responsive is one of those big things. It's just a fancy way of saying no matter what device you're going to use it on, it's going to look good. They've put a lot of detail into the development of it so that they keep us from making pages that look bad. It used to be that they would let us do some pretty crazy things to SharePoint sites. And so I could go into SharePoint Designer, or I could go onto a page and I could make it look awful. And then if someone opened it up on a cell phone, it became completely unusable. All of the web parts now, though, when they get made, whether they're made using the SharePoint framework and it's a customized web part, or it's made using just out of the box and it's configured from one of the out of the box web parts, it is going to be 100% responsive. So if I'm using it on my phone, if someone's using it on their iPad, if someone's using it on their computer, it is going to render correctly. And so it's going to redesign the page and make sure everything is going to look just fantastic for them. We are going to have what we call hub sites. Hub sites is going to be a way that you can organize your sites together in a clear and concise hierarchy. Back in the day, we used to spend a lot of time going over and saying, what kind of site collections do I want? And then within those site collections, what subsites do I need? And how am I going to manage the permissions at the subsite level? In the new modern infrastructure, we don't do that. There's a lot of reasons for that, but mostly in the cloud, it's better and easier to have a lot of things versus one or two large things. And so having site collections is just something that we have to get used to. It's kind of the new way of working, the new way of thinking about things. And the way we connect those different site collections is through hub sites. And then hub sites becomes a scope by which we can do things like search, or we can do things like have web parts that are going to say, show me all my events from a hub site, show me all of my documents from this hub site, let me search this hub site. And so it's pretty easy. I'll use Planet as an example. We may have a hub site with all of our corporate functions, and then for our East and state and local government team, they may have their own hub site, whereas our West and Central team is going to have their own hub sites. And so you can kind of search and scope by that piece of information. And it's a way to segregate and put content together. So you can have a lot of different hub sites within an organization. It's a way to scope and push information there. And then news pages and templates, that's a way to push information out to people. It's a way that you can quickly and easily push information out to folks. Half the people on the call right here, my team pushes out information to them every 2 weeks. And I'm happy to say that every 2 weeks, they all read it. And we know that because we're able to put it into a template. We're able to send it out via an email, and then we're able to go back in and look at statistics and see that we're getting the proper page hit. And we know that people are reading our pages. We're all able to do this in just a matter of seconds. It's basically, if you can learn to use Word, which most of us already do, then you're able to work with SharePoint pages. And so it's a really great experience. And all of this is then just updated within the modern web part pages. And so before I run over and do a demo, Mark, I want to open it up and see if you kind of have anything to add to that. Otherwise, I will open up my demo site and we can kind of go through and show some of the different pieces.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. Hopefully my audio's working well. I guess what I'd like to do just is take a moment and kind of talk quickly on sort of what we've been seeing from a customer side of this. So, as Jen mentioned, years ago, the story was quite different as this was coming out. And in fact, for, much of 2016 and 2017, this story was a little bit difficult because Microsoft had rolled out this great functionality, at least the start of a great functionality that essentially little folks were adopting. And that's because there were, in those days, there were a lot of things that weren't available, like being able to put custom headers on a page, or the web part selection was very limited and that type of thing. And so Microsoft's been adding new and more capabilities to modern, and it's the story's kind of flipped a bit on its head. So I have the opportunity to talk to customers a lot of times sort of up front before we ever engage with them, and then we've been doing projects with customers. In fact, we just got done migrating thousands of sites for a large customer who was moving from SharePoint 2010 to the cloud. And the way we look at this, obviously, like user adoption, user communication, the need to brace for that change is very, very important. So that's stuff that we try to encourage folks to really think about a lot up front. But then it's also putting in a plan for how if you're on-prem today, you're going to migrate, or if you're in the cloud today or in some sort of hybrid scenario, how you're going to move from existing publishing sites to modern, because they're from a performance perspective, from a security and ease of management perspective, there's a lot of value to moving to modern. We talk to customers regularly who have very highly nested subsites in 365 from initial migration work that might have been done. And they want to take advantage of the new features. They want to see improved performance. They want to be able to reduce their sort of management overhead of SharePoint. And those are all drivers to moving to modern. And so there are some tools that are available through Microsoft that will do some level of assessment of what you have out there today. And some sites, some existing team sites, especially those that don't have a high level of publishing customization to it, may potentially be able to be groupified, which means that essentially gets associated with an Office 365 group. And it converts all lists and libraries to modern and creates a new homepage for you in that process. And that's a step that many will take, at least as an interim, to start getting everyone used to the more modern experience. But then there's the idea of the hubs and spokes. And what we tell folks is the way to get there typically is to do a migration into those modern spaces. So, we had a customer who had on-prem, and the work to get them migrated to the cloud was going to take a certain amount of time as is. But what was actually interesting about that is that it was faster to look at their highly nested sites and then flatten those out into the new structure to support modern. So we were able to have that conversation with them and say, look, you can actually save yourselves some decent amount of change just by moving to the modern paradigm. So those are dialogues that we're having with customers along the way. But sometimes it's groupifying, sometimes it's rebuilding, using the tools that are available from Microsoft, or having that dialogue is kind of where we always get started. So thanks, Jen, for letting me jump in there.
Awesome. All right. Well, everybody, this should look familiar to you if you are using SharePoint Modern right now. If you're not, we're happy to show you more around it. This is my SharePoint landing page. So this is where I'm going to go to see a roll-up of everything SharePoint within my environment. When I want to go and create new sites now, I can come over here and I can say create a site. And I'm going to get two options. I'm going to get a team site and a communication site. Now you can do some things using some custom development. Now remember, we talked a little bit about the SharePoint framework. So there's some things you can do using SharePoint development that would allow you to create some custom site templates here. But for now, out of the box, we have team sites and communication sites. If I click on a communication site, it's going to let me create one of these intranet sites I was talking about. So I have a topic style, a showcase style, and a blank style. Now, back in the day when we used to create different template styles, what it meant was that different SharePoint features were activated and we'd have access to different types of lists and libraries and different things like that. In this version, in the modern SharePoint, the only things it means is that different web parts are configured differently on the page. Other than that, the sites remain exactly the same. Now, your SharePoint communication sites are not going to have groups associated with them because by default, you don't want to have groups associated typically with very large groups. And then your intranet sites are meant to be open to everyone. So your intranet sites are going to be meant to be that everyone in the organization has access. We're going to come and configure consume information. And then I might have a separate site collection where there's just a small number of people collaborating on information, and that would be using a team site that would have a group associated, and that would also be likely using Microsoft Teams. So when you create a communication site, it's not going to have that Teams integration, and it's not going to have a group associated. So if I went ahead and I just collected here, I like to honestly start with the topic one. It's the one I typically land with, but you could go with either one. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to call it the You Already Own It Demo 2. I can come in here, can put the information, and I'm going to just hit finish, and it's going to create the site for me. Now it's going to give me a collection of web parts that I can start with, and then I can start adding users to the site. So this is our hero web part that we have. And then below that, we have our news web part and our events web part. Now we'll see it's showing us sample content as well as our documents web part. It's showing us sample content. If someone else was to log into the site, there wouldn't really be anything there because there's no content in there. But now as a site administrator, I'm able to go in and I'm able to work on the site. Now this is just a simple SharePoint site that's here. If I wanted to, I could come over here and go to site information. I'm going to see the standard things about the site. I can see the site logo. I can change it if I wanted to put in a site logo. And I can also do a hub site association. So if I'm associating it with a hub site, what I'm basically saying is please associate me with this hub site and make me a child site to this hub site. It's not doing anything to the hierarchy. I'm still an individual site collection. It's just saying take on the properties of this hub site. The properties it's going to take on have to do with theming and have to do with navigation, and eventually you're going to have to do with some things with permissions. Now moving forward, some of the things that they have in development on the roadmap are things like asking permission to be part of a hub site. Not everyone can go in and say, let me be part of a hub site, so you don't have to worry there. You can pick and choose who you want to own hub sites and then who can ask to be part of hub sites. So it is a permissions-based process, so you don't have to worry about it. Not everyone is going to come and connect to your corporate intranet or anything like that. So it is something that can be controlled. So if I come up here and click Planet Home and say save, I just have to save it here. We'll give it 1 second. And now what we see on the site is I'm connected to a hub site. And so I've consumed, if you notice, it was very light because I went from a teal color to a light blue, but you notice I now have a different theme on my site and I have an extra layer of navigation. So now this navigation is going to come on the site and I could drill down and I could see all of my navigation in my mega menu that's here. And I see all of my site navigation still that's here once I get off of the mega menu. Okay, and be sure if you guys have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat window while we're going. Once I do that though, and then I go into things like change the look, and I go to something like theme, I'm going to get a message that say your site is connected to the Planet Home and you're not able to change the theme. So once I connect up to that hub, I'm not going to be able to make those changes there. If anything changes in the hub, it will filter down to my intranet site. So super easy to do. Don't have to worry about anything there. Once I do that, I can start working with the web parts. All again, super easy. Once I put my page in edit mode, something I will notice is I don't have a lot of the things like I did before with web part zones and where am I going to put my web parts in the zones and how am I going to do it. But I do have things like page sections. So when I'm over here, I can add new sections if I wanted to. I can also come over and edit a section. And if I edit the section, I can do things like change the color of it. I can also, if I wanted to make it a 2-column section, I could do that. Now remember when I was talking about things being responsive, it automatically resized the web part here and changed the entire look and feel of that web part because it needed to fit into a smaller space. So SharePoint's going to continue to do that for me however I need to in the site to make sure that everything looks beautiful no matter where it goes. All right. The web part is also very contextual. So where I'm clicking on it, you'll notice here, there's lots of edits. I have an edit that's going to be down here. I also have an edit that's up here. So I have to get used to that with working with it to know that it's contextual. So if I come here, I'm going to be editing the web part, which is going to let me edit the entire web part with layer and tiles. So if you remember, this is what the other web part looked like between the two different layouts. I can pick if I want to have all 5 tiles. I can pick if I just want to have 2 tiles, 3 tiles. Again, I can go however I want to lay my site out. But if I want to work with specific images and different things like that, I can come in and just edit them individually here. So if I come and edit here, I see what my link is for. Down with my images, I can auto select images, custom image, color block. If I do things like custom image, I can come up here and change. There's going to be some great things that they have coming out in the new modern experience. One of the things that I love that they have deployed is an enterprise gallery. So you can have an entire enterprise gallery where you can put your approved images. So we can have all of our Planet approved images. These are the ones that we want everyone to use, managed in one single spot, and then people can reference them. We can also do a web search where I can come in and go in and drill down and find information that makes sense. We can have it to where it's Creative Commons only, meaning I don't have to worry about the rights to it. Different things there. Those are settings you can control. So I can come over there. I can find a great looking image. I can say open. It's going to put it there on my site for me. Now, if I wanted to zoom in or zoom out, I have the ability to do that. Again, it's going to control it for me to make sure it's doing everything that makes sense. Okay. I can also, if I wanted to have a call to action, I could come in here and put that. Depending on where I'm at in the buttons, I could say click here to learn more. Depending on which one I'm at, it's going to make sense to have them or not. And so that option is going to go away. If this was the fifth option there wouldn't have enough room for it. So that option would go away there. And there could also be a separate link there if I wanted it to go to a different site than where the main button was going. This is probably one of the most popular new web parts that's come out. It's the hero web part. It is probably the easiest one to work with. As I'm adding these images from the internet, they're just getting added to the SharePoint site. People can go in and use them. They can build these very, very dynamic pages with very little training. They're very proud of the pages that they can build, and they're very meaningful, and users get very excited and take a lot of ownership of it. And it's a lot easier to get them to want to change their pages and to want to engage with you, working with them and using them, because they have so much control, but it's so easy to work with. All right. We also have news post. And so when I'm coming down here to the news post, I'm going to go ahead and republish this page. My news posts that are here are going to be different pages that I can create. And when I come here, they're going to give me different templates. So I have a blank one. I have a visual one that's going to just lay out some text for me in a very visual way. And I have a basic text one. Okay. So I can come here, I'm going to say create a page. Now that's going to pull up my content here, and I have it, and it's great. So I could put this in here, and I can have this, and I can post my news. And so my news is getting posted to the site. It's going to be now available for people to see. When I'm clicking on it, though, I can also do things like sending it by email. So when I'm sending this post by email, I'm going to be able to go out, people will get it in their email. So this is a great way that we can send out these emails, and we can show people what type of information do I want them to go back into SharePoint to reference, but they're actually still getting it in their email. So if I was to come here and say, let me do another new news post here, I'm going to go in and do a blank one. So this is kind of what it would be starting from scratch. I'm going to come over here and change my image. I'm going to do another web search that we have here. We'll do, maybe meetings right now. That one's fine. And I'll pick one that looks, meetings aren't boring. We won't do that, but I don't love meetings. But, we'll pick one here. This is probably the least exciting one I've looked at in a while. We'll go with these people. All right, so I've got my people working happily in their meeting. Okay. And then I've also got, I want to show you guys here a Word document. Now this is a Word document. If you work with us in Evolve, you've probably seen this before because it's one of our communication plans. But I just want to show you that I'm over here in Word and I'm going to copy and paste directly from Word. And I'm going to come over here and inside of the text box, I'm simply going to do a Control V. And you will notice that it was able to pull up all of our formatting for us. Now, it didn't necessarily pull the colors for the table, but I am okay with that because I have tried to do this before with many things inside of SharePoint, and it was never able to pull anything over. And now we're able to pull, copy and paste directly from SharePoint and Word and back and forth, and things will pull over beautifully. So now I have this content here. Again, I can post the news and it's going to show up here. This one has the image because I went ahead and added the image there so you see that. And I can simply come here. And again, if I wanted to send it by email, now my image is even going to be there. So I can go ahead, I'll send this to myself so you guys can see what that would look like. And it is just a really great way to work and interact with others. All right, and that will come in just a minute here to my inbox, and I'll show you guys what that looks like. Okay, so this is coming into my inbox. I'm seeing the image here, I'm seeing our template, and I'm seeing the content that was in my email. So like I said, this is a way that we use this on our team to communicate details out to another team about every 2 weeks. We send them updated information and say, hey, did you know? And we send them, hey, there's 5 things you should know about this, or 3 things you should know about this, or did you know? And we're having a lot of success with everybody reading through those emails. And so it's a really great way to make sure that you're still reaching them in the signals that make the most sense. They're still getting it in their inbox where they're used to working, but the content's actually stored in SharePoint and it's still there for long term. All right, so we've gone for about 30 minutes here, so I definitely want to move on to some of the other things that we have. So Mark, is there any other things that you want to see from the demo standpoint before we move on and kind of talk through some of the other things in the PowerPoint?
No, I think from a modern internet standpoint, that ticks all the boxes. Of course, I think you have a slide coming up that kind of shows the lookbook. Might be good to share that.
Yep. So the 2 last things here, we have the SharePoint mobile app. So every modern internet site can also be viewed on a mobile app. There's a couple of things that are coming out. They're on the roadmap currently. The biggest one is that the mobile app is going to support co-branding. So right now, if I wanted to open the SharePoint mobile app, it would say SharePoint, and I'd have to go click and open that. Very soon, I'm going to be able to click Planet Technologies, and then I'm going to be able to open up the SharePoint mobile app from there. So I'm going to be able to go directly to my intranet from an intranet branded icon. So pretty excited about that. Those are all things that are in and on the roadmap and coming soon. And then finally, the last thing we have, this is what Mark just mentioned, is the lookbook. Microsoft has put together its https lookbook.microsoft.com, and it is an example of probably 30, 40, 50 sites that are all built using modern SharePoint intranets. So everything is done. Some of it is done out of the box. Some sites will have a little bit done with the SharePoint framework, but they'll talk to you about what was done to customize it when they're there. So they all have a pretty unique look and feel, but there's some really great and complex things that you can do using the lookbook. So if it's something that you're interested in, it's definitely worth taking a dive into and seeing some examples of some of the things that you can do to get some inspiration there. All right, the next one we want to look at is Microsoft Search. So this one's really great because it's a device responsive search experience across Windows, Edge, and Office 365. The next thing we're going to talk about is Project Cortex, and Project Cortex is really utilizing a lot of the things you're getting from Microsoft Search. And so it's just a really great feature that we have that allows us to pull in everything from Office 365 from multiple locations. And Mark, why don't you talk to us a little bit about some of the benefits of the modern search experience while I'm pulling up one of our demos?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, I mean, you can see some of it here in the screenshots that are provided, but the idea of modern search is that it works across all of the platforms that Jennifer mentioned. And the idea is, you know, if you're looking for information about an employee in your organization or some type of content that would be related to a topic, you could see that whether you use the search box from the Windows Start menu, or you use Word, or you use Edge, as is here. And so, despite the fact that you now have a unified search experience across all of those properties, you also have context-specific search for those as well. So if you're in Word, for example, and you're searching for something that would match a Microsoft Word specific setting, you type in the first 3 characters, for example, for signature maybe, and that information would show up also in that search. So it's organization wide, but it's also context specific to the application that you're using. And we saw it here as well in the SharePoint site that Jennifer showed us a few moments ago, but it is a fully responsive search experience as well. And it's actually proven to save some time, because as you're searching, you're seeing search result hits without ever hitting the enter button or the go button that makes you go and page through those results. So it is a bit faster for searching as well.
Yeah, and one thing that I would mention is that they have announced on the roadmap that beginning at a certain date in the future, that all of the Office Pro Plus installations, as part of the installation, they're going to be switching over people's default search to be using Bing as the default search versus what they have. So that's going to be something that you will definitely want to reach out to your cloud strategist, the You Already Own It team, really anyone at Planet, to help you work through that, find out if that's going to be something that will impact you. They haven't released all of the details. It's one of those things that they announced that they were going to do, didn't really give a ton of detail, but there was much public outcry. So I'm pretty sure, there's more details that are going to be coming as to what exactly that means and what controls are going to be available with that as well. So that'll be something that if you have any concerns or questions about, that's the perfect type of thing to use this program for, to come back and talk to us, and we can help you get all the answers you need to that.
Yeah, awesome. And just 2 other quick caveats. One, modern search in SharePoint is scoped to the hub, right? So Jen showed you earlier how to associate the spoke sites to the parent hub site. And so when you use that search, you're getting that scope to that. So when we're thinking through, like, all right, how are your hubs and spokes designed, we're also thinking about that search experience, because it's very much so tied to that. And the second caveat is that at least today, unless Jen, you have heard anything different, there are a few limitations with the modern search, specifically around sort of how you customize the results. So if you're using the traditional SharePoint search, those abilities are still available to you if you create a search center site. But Microsoft, of course, and I think for a large majority of projects, can move to modern search.
Yes, and I would say that we are probably months, weeks, if not months away from being able to customize the search experience in the modern environment. Those are the things that are rolling out to customers right now. It's taking a very slow rollout though. So we're starting to see it, and it's in the category of rolling out, but I was actually talking to Karem about that this week when I was at Microsoft, and he was saying they've kind of slowed down how quick that's coming, but they will have that out pretty soon. So If you need to get those customized refiners and you want to customize the tags and the pop-ups that come up when the search is there, that's something that you could, again, use the SharePoint framework and different things like that to customize. It's just more of a development effort. So that's all coming soon. You just have to wait a little bit longer on that. So if you did have very complex search experiences in your classic intranet, that could be one thing that might be slowing you down a little bit, might be causing you some pause. But I really do believe that by the end of Microsoft's fiscal, that will all be a concern that's no longer there. All right, so kind of did the number. So Project Cortex, we're going to talk about this one a little bit here. So Project Cortex is going to be a way for customers to achieve outcomes from using AI. So this is going to be a tool that is built upon all of the other Microsoft tools. So you're going to be using the Azure machine learning tools. You're going to be using Microsoft Search. You're going to be using all of the Azure AI, and you're going to be using it to train and classify documents so that metadata is pulled out of those documents and used to tag documents and pull together topic pages and categories of content that can then drive and pull groups of people together in a very collaborative way. This is probably one of the most powerful new tools I have seen come out of Microsoft in a very long time. I was actually on campus last week just looking at some more hands-on things that they have coming, and I'm very, very excited about it. So one of the things they really wanted us to help share is this is not the next iteration of Microsoft Delve, but this is really a whole new thing of just pulling together existing features that all of those technologies are using and making them work together. So we're going to be able to have basically document trainers that are using AI to recognize information in both unstructured and structured documents, highlighting that and pulling them out maybe in SharePoint columns or different things like that. And then from that, having topic sections built up and different things like that. So this is one of those things that's coming soon. If you were at Microsoft Ignite, you heard a ton about it. I'm sure we'll hear a ton more about it at Build. And then also the SharePoint conference that's coming out. So this is their newest application that's coming. I put a slide over here that we were going to do a demo, and then I put in our little dog saying, just kidding. They have this one locked up. They are not letting anybody near this one until they're ready to launch it. So this is not something that we can give you a demo on just yet, but we are in several of the partner programs. In fact, two of us were out there last week. Mark and I are in a partner program. And as soon as we have our hands on it, we will be coming back to the You Already Own It group and giving you guys hands-on demos. If you guys have any questions about it, or if you think it's something that you would be interested in, please reach out to us, because we have some channels where we might be able to get you into some of the private previews that are going on. So Mark, do you have anything that you want to add to this one? I'm trying to be sensitive to our time and make sure we can get everything covered. So
yeah, I'm super excited about it. If I start on it, I'll probably I'll let you on.
Awesome. All right, so I did put in the deck, and I know they'll be sharing this, where you can get additional information about it. These are the Ignite sessions. They're each probably about 40 minutes, except for the one that's the theater session, which is I think just about 20 or 30 minutes, and it will walk you through what is happening. And as you see on the screen here, there's a knowledge center. The beauty of this profile and this knowledge center is that this was not created by anyone. This is something that system created and system generated based on the work that's being done behind the screen, behind the scenes, from the AI that's reading the content and pulling it together based on that. Now, again, there's all sorts of controls to make sure that it's done safely, to make sure that the right people can see everything. And so all of that is taken into consideration. So I'm really excited when we're going to be able to get the chance to show this off to you guys. And I think it's going to have some really powerful impact moving forward over the next year or so. All right, the next one we have SharePoint list integration and stuff with a Power Platform. So here are our logos that we have for the Power Platform. We were going to talk a little bit about some of the Power power things you can do inside of SharePoint list. So I'm going to just jump over to our demo that we have here. So then that will leave us some time to go into some of the customized web parts as well. So I'm going to go back over to this list that we have. And this is my site from another time, but we have a column here. And I just wanted to show that I have got a column here that's a date. And so this can be any date that's inside of a SharePoint library, but I can easily create a flow on it that lets me set a reminder. And this flow knows that I have date columns inside of my SharePoint library. So it's something that is already there based on, oh, you have a date column. You probably need to do something around a date, and I probably need to remind you to do something around a date. So I can simply come over here and click this, and I can build out my flow, and I can have it notify me, get an email reminder how many days in advance, and I simply have to click create. For someone who had to teach people how to do that inside of SharePoint Designer, this is about 10 million times easier. So I'm very excited about how easy they are making this to work. And so we are able to use these power features and combine them with SharePoint lists and libraries to build out these different templates that are there. Probably about 85 to 90% of what we need, we can use building these existing templates. So I can come over here and I can say flow, and I can say create a flow, and it's going to come up, and based on the columns that are on my list, it's going to already start with different flows that could be there for me. So it's going to be something that's automatically there for me. Send a customized email when a new SharePoint list is added. Great. Those are the types of things that I already need. So these types of flows, the more that we start building these, the more SharePoint sees, the SharePoint team starts seeing which ones are the most common. Then they start to build out the quick flows, like the one that was there that was send a reminder based on a date. So these are great things that we can do here. We can also take the list, and when you see here, this does not look like a standard SharePoint list at all. This is one that we have customized inside of Power Apps. And so we can take any one of our SharePoint lists and we can say, go into Power Apps, and then we can customize the look and feel of that list. And so that's something that we can very easily do. It's going to be one of those things where it is a multi-level tool. You can make it as easy as you want to as hard and as complex as you want, and your skill level and your required skill set to do it is going to vary on the complexity that you want to do. So if you're just making very simple changes to it, you can point and click and use a lot of the features. If you're doing some more complex things, it's not that you necessarily need code. It is a no-code solution, but it is using a syntax language that is very similar to, I would call, Excel rules. So if you can figure out large, hard, complex Excel rules, then you can figure out some of these things inside of Power Apps. All right. And I think the last thing that we wanted to cover in our last 15 minutes, Mark, did you have anything you wanted to kind of add here?
Well, I will add, despite the fact that you did state that it was a low code or no code solution, Microsoft has provided extensibility capability to the Power Apps and Flow platform, as well as Power BI. Because when we talk about the Power Platform, a lot of times, people are thinking about the sort of traditional forms and workflow scenarios that they may be trying to recreate using Power Apps and Power Automate. But Power BI is very much so part of that. So, we're finding customers that, want to start creating their own connectors to, some centralized data stores that they may have, or APIs that they may have that are existing. And, despite the fact that I think there's like over 120 some connectors today across the platform, that, there is the ability to essentially create your own API specification that will connect to it. And then your end users or power users who are using the product can drag that action into, say, Power Automate and make those connections just like anybody else would. So that's just a quick note I wanted to throw out there.
No, awesome. I'm glad you Glad you brought that up. Awesome. And the last thing that we wanted to show today were 2 examples of custom web parts that we have done. And so we talked a little bit about how you could use a SharePoint framework to build out these web parts. And so, Mark, why don't you give us a quick overview of just the value of the SharePoint framework, and then I can demo my web part, and then you can talk about your solution that I have screenshots of.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, SharePoint framework is one of the things that's been around for a few years. It is a product that is growing in its capabilities, and it can do everything from writing custom web parts to also handling the customization of your headers and footers and how lists are items are displayed. So, in SharePoint, if you want to go into a SharePoint list and you want columns to be formatted a certain way based on values in that column or other columns, you certainly have the out-of-the-box way to do that, and it's actually better than it has ever been in that way. You used to have to do stuff with JavaScript to do that, and there's so much you can do without that anymore. But if you need something above and beyond that, you have the ability to develop a customizer using SharePoint Framework. And the great thing about SharePoint Framework, so the app model for SharePoint is something that we've used a lot over the past 6 years or so, and we still have a lot of customers that are using that for integrated applications that may want to show up here. But SharePoint Framework is one of those things that Microsoft said, look, we want to make development, those that want to customize SharePoint, easier than it's ever been, because for those that maybe have been out of the SharePoint development game for a while, the story a long time ago was developers had to have their own machines and their own environments to do a lot of development. It was typically very painful. Deployment was difficult. Before Sandbox Solutions, there were situations where web parts would impact farms. Of course, Sandbox was supposed to help with that. Now the development story is fairly simple. If you have developers who know JavaScript and or TypeScript with some very limited tools on their machine, now they can test their solutions and deploy their solutions. And because it is essentially a TypeScript framework, deploying something now to SharePoint also means that you can deploy it to teams. So if you have a web part, that's showing you, say, resource utilization in your group, or for HR, if you write a little tracking app that you want to track candidates along the process, that app can show up in SharePoint as well as Teams, and it makes it very nice. And Microsoft's also adding new capabilities around integration for SharePoint Framework. So, all your Azure Active Directory authentication, everything that would be part of the app itself is natively handled by SharePoint Framework, and it's all done securely. So, it's one of those things that we get excited, to talk about. So I won't go into much more detail than that. But if you haven't checked out SharePoint development in a while, it's definitely worth coming back and taking a look at this.
Yeah. All right. So 2 of the demos that we have, I'm going to show you guys one that we have on the site. If you're familiar with our Evolve solution, it is our user and adoption solution. And one of the things that's super important is meeting users where they're at. So getting them access to training videos or information where they're at. And so a lot of times they might be in a SharePoint site and they have a question about something. And so we can come in here and just do a search on maybe signatures. Maybe they have a question about something there, and I can search on signatures. Now I see I have a lot of older versions of Outlook and different things like that. That's just because on the Evolve site that I have this configured to, I have a lot of content available because I have my full library. But I can come over here and say, yeah, that's the video I was looking for, and now it's going to come up. And so we're using the SharePoint framework to build us the web part that lets us go out, connect to the Evolve site, pass over the credentials, allows us to do a search, bring back all of the available videos, and then allows us to play the video here for users to see. So this is one example of the site that we have. We talked about SharePoint framework, and we talked about sites being responsive. And so remember, as we're talking about doing things in the site, I'm not changing anything about this site. I'm simply moving it around, and the site is behaving the way that it should so that it remains in a very responsive state. So these are different things that, you know, happen when it's over here. It's going to be bigger if I come back to the web part, even if I change it here, and, you know, maybe I'm going to make it this way. Notice I just flipped again. So my web parts are moving around and resizing based on the location that they've been put on. So this isn't anything that I did special inside of this web part. I didn't have to reconfigure it. I didn't have to go into the settings. It's because it's built using the SharePoint framework, and the SharePoint framework works inside of SharePoint. It then is therefore also responsive. All right. So again, remember, as we're kind of getting ready and wrapping up, if you have any questions, please do add them to the chat window, and we'll be happy to answer them as we wrap up. And then the last framework control that Mark was going to walk us through is a custom calendar control. So we have some screenshots of it here versus an environment because it was in a client environment. But Mark, why don't you go ahead and walk us through that?
Yeah, and I think the story for this one is really, you know, we had a situation where we were working on an application that was meant to be a mobile app, right? So a native mobile app that could also be a website. And to reach, you know, as many folks as possible, it was like, okay, the app was designed for sort of, you know, across the enterprise calendaring. And how can we, you know, make that context specific? So when you're on a SharePoint, say, for a specific team, you can see everything, but maybe it only by default shows the information that's relevant to that SharePoint team. And likewise, when you're in Microsoft Teams, it would be scoped to that as well. And the experience would be the same. So when you're adding or changing events and that type of thing, the experience is always the same. So this was a situation where the application was developed as a single page app, and with in about a day of effort, we were able to get it, you know, also working in these other tools as well. So I think that's kind of the success story on that one.
Awesome. All righty. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our demos and presentation here. So we do have a couple of minutes for questions. So if anyone has any questions and you want to come off your mic, or if you want to type them into the window, or if even there's anyone from the Planet team that wants to throw a question to us of something we didn't cover, please feel free to do that. And then Bob, if you're still around, you can close us out with the last couple of slides, and we can kind of go from there.
I am here. So I'll give us a second to see if there's anybody who is going to has any questions. But if not, feel free to type them in while I'm going over this section here. As I jokingly like to say on all our calls, right? This You Already Own a call has been brought to you by Office 365 and Azure Advantage. If you want to go ahead and just jump to the next slide, Jen. So, in Azure Advantage, the whole point of all of this is there's a couple of elements here. One is, and I'm not going to read the slide. Most of you have been on a number of these calls and you've seen this, but just a reminder, what it is you have access to, some of our best architects and engineers here at Planet to help you get support when you're needed, give you ongoing management, as well as playing like a timeshare architect role, right? So we're able to put together a package or solution that meets your needs, depending on whether you need people who are touching things, people who are advising, right? And either way, we can deliver that solution to you. So we have lots of packages available for you to sort of have access to this. So reach out to your account team and or your You Already Own a team, if you have questions regarding this. I think that's all, Jen.
Awesome. Well, I don't see any questions that have come in, so we can go ahead and wrap things up for today. But as always, anybody on the call is happy to answer any questions that you guys have, and you can always reach out to your You Already Own It specialist or your cloud strategist, and we're happy to answer any questions. So we hope this has been super helpful for you guys, and we'll see you guys again next month. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.